Welcome to the Mathematics of History. At the Frontier Culture Museum, we were able to conduct an interdisciplinary study of math and social studies. In this way, students are able to make connections between past and present and across curriculum. Students are also able to make connections to objects and concepts in their everyday lives. We investigated mathematics through temperature, population, numbers, measurement, geometry, currency, education, record keeping, architecture, and more.
Today we will be telling you about the math associated with the Irish forge and farm. They had many jobs in the community, one of them being blacksmiths. Blacksmiths took care of 100 families. They would make iron tools for those families. In order to be able to morph and form the iron to form those tools, the fire had to be around 2,000 degrees. One of the main products were nails. The measurements of the nail making were based off of eyeballing and used the length of the head of the hammer. 2,000 nails were made a day, usually made by the blacksmith's apprentice. In order for people to pay for goods created by the blacksmith, they traded cash and carry. Since they had a shortage of hard coins, they had a mixture of many types of cash from other countries. This was before the euro was used as a unified currency. The way in which they built homes was from stone and straw. Some measurement differences seen were the short door frames. The Irish farms, on average, had 40 acres of land. The farm could make a capacity of 200 yards of fabric from their land.
There was also a lot of math used in the everyday lives of individuals in West Africa. The buildings and entryways were all rectangular, and the rectangular-shaped buildings and fences were used because they didn't have to worry about staying warm like in other areas of the world. The doors were extremely short, only slightly over 5 feet tall. The men were farmers and mainly grew yams. If the man had more yams, it meant he had more wives. One family typically had about 8 children and multiple wives, and the wives were responsible for taking care of the children.
The English farm was owned by a successful farmer between 1620 and 1640. He had a larger than average house with 150 to 300 acres. He had 100 sheep that needed half an acre to graze and 30 cows that needed 1 acre to graze. At the time, they were taking inventory with wheat, barley, and rye, needing 36 acres. The farmer used cash instead of barter. There was a family of 8 that lived in the house, and the parents lived to be 68 to 70 years old. Their oldest son died at the age of 8, however. When they would make food, they would measure with no equivalent measurements. They would just learn how to do it from their mother. They would check temperature with their wrist, and there was no timing to see when the food was done. They would just knock on the bread to hear if it was done.
The Native Americans settled from the Mississippi to the Atlantic Ocean, and the ones we saw were mostly during the 1700s. The people were not as nomadic, so they changed dress throughout the season, and they traded either through animal skins or beaver pelts, which made the beaver populations get so low because of this fur trade. Part of the women's work was to soften the deer skin, which would take around 5 days. In this particular settlement, there were round houses which were surrounded by a circular fence and housed a single family with 6 to 10 people. I asked why they use circular shapes, and the interpreter discussed that the circle is universal and can heat easier in a shape without corners, and this was helpful because of the changing seasons and changing weather. The Native Americans are still here, and they are not just people of the past, but they still have a future.
We have made it through our journey to the American farm. The previous countries have influenced mathematics to create concepts we have today. Geometry was used throughout these farms over time through angles and measurement in architecture and enclosures, such as fences. Plants were planted a specific distance apart to optimize growth. There was a mallet for hammering nails that was heavy. This mallet was dense and weighted. The houses were rectangular in shape, and so were the surrounding fences. In the house built in the 1850s, there were measurement cups used for cooking more accurately. This developed to ensure accuracy in cooking over time. The owners of the house had slaves, which helped their income because they did not have to pay for workers. At this time, 1/4 of the population were slaves. The stairs and beds were larger by this time because people were growing and changing, and their environment needed to follow suit.